When World War II ended, America made a promise to the soldiers who had fought for freedom overseas. This promise was called the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, but everyone knew it as the GI Bill. It was a revolutionary idea, honestly, a thank you from a grateful nation. The bill offered a ladder to a new kind of life, a life in the American middle class. It told veterans that they could go to college, buy a home, and start a business, all with the government's help. For millions of white veterans, this promise became a reality. They returned from the war and used the GI Bill to build a future for their families, creating wealth that would be passed down for generations. The benefits of the GI Bill were powerful and life-changing tools. The government guaranteed loans, which meant banks were more willing to lend money to veterans for buying a house, often with no down payment required. This single provision fueled the creation of America's suburbs. The bill also paid for college tuition and provided a living stipend, opening the doors of higher education to men who otherwise could never have afforded it. It was a massive investment in the American people, one that paid off by creating a confident, educated, and prosperous middle class that powered the nation's post-war economic boom. But this story of success is not the whole story. The promise of the GI Bill was not extended to everyone who wore the uniform. Of the 1.2 million black soldiers who served bravely in a segregated military, most returned home to find that the ladder to prosperity had been pulled up. The bill was designed in a way that gave local, state-level officials the power to distribute its benefits. In an America still defined by Jim Crow laws and deep-seated racism, this local control became a weapon of exclusion. The very same program that lifted millions of white families into comfort and security actively worked to keep black families locked out. The GI Bill was not just a piece of legislation, it was a script for post-war America. It determined who would get a piece of the American dream and who would be left behind to watch from a distance. For white veterans, it was a golden ticket to a new life of opportunity and stability. For black veterans, it was often just another broken promise in a long history of them. They had fought a war against fascism abroad, only to come home to a system that denied them the very freedoms they had risked their lives to defend. This was not an accident of history. It was a deliberate choice that would define the country for decades to come. The most significant wealth-building tool in the GI Bill was the VA Guaranteed Home Loan. For white veterans, this meant they could purchase homes in newly built suburbs with little to no money down. This opportunity was the foundation of generational wealth for countless families. Owning a home meant having a stable asset that grew in value over time, a piece of the American dream that could be passed down to children and grandchildren. Entire communities like the famous Levittowns sprang up across the country, filled with young families starting their new lives. These government-backed loans were the engine that built the white middle class and its suburban landscape. However, for black veterans, this engine of prosperity was almost entirely out of reach. When they tried to use their GI Bill benefits to buy a home, they ran into a wall of systemic discrimination. The federal government had created a practice known as redlining, where maps were drawn to mark black neighborhoods as too hazardous for investment. Banks, following these maps, refused to issue loans for homes in these areas. At the same time, racist housing covenants, rules written into property deeds, explicitly forbade the sale of homes in new white suburbs to black families. The dream of a home with a yard became a nightmare of rejection and exclusion. The local administration of the GI Bill made this discrimination even worse. In the hands of biased local VA officers, especially in the South, applications from black veterans were routinely denied or simply ignored. The numbers tell a shocking story of this injustice. In many cities across the nation, an incredibly small fraction of VA-backed loans went to black veterans. For example, in 13 cities in Mississippi, out of over 3,200 loans issued to veterans in one period, only 2 went to black applicants. This wasn't just a few isolated incidents. It was a widespread, systematic blockade that denied black families the chance to own property and build equity. This denial of home ownership had devastating and long-lasting consequences. While white families were building wealth through their homes, black families were largely confined to being renters in neglected urban neighborhoods. They were denied the primary vehicle for economic advancement available to working-class Americans. This injustice wasn't just about a house. It was about access to better schools, safer communities, and financial security. The GI Bill, in practice, created two different Americas, one where white veterans were given a home and a future, and another where black veterans were told their service did not count. The educational benefits of the GI Bill were meant to be another path to upward mobility. The bill offered to pay for college or vocational training, giving veterans the skills needed for better-paying jobs. For many white veterans, this was a life-altering opportunity. Universities across the country saw their enrollments swell with former soldiers, many of whom were the first in their families to attend college. This influx of educated workers helped fuel innovation and economic growth. The GI Bill transformed American higher education, making it accessible to the masses and cementing its role as a gateway to the middle class. A college degree became a ticket to a professional career and a stable, prosperous life. But for black veterans, the path to a college education was filled with obstacles. In the Jim Crow South, segregation laws legally barred them from attending the same universities as their white counterparts. The major state universities, with their vast resources and numerous programs, were closed to them simply because of the color of their skin. This left black veterans with very few options. Their only choice was to apply to the small, underfunded network of historically black colleges and universities, or HBCUs. These institutions did their best to serve the returning soldiers, but they were simply not equipped to handle the overwhelming demand. The HBCUs faced a crisis. They lacked the funding, the classroom space, and the faculty to accommodate the tens of thousands of black veterans who were eager to use their hard-earned educational benefits. While white universities were expanding and building new facilities with government support, black colleges were left to struggle with limited resources. As a result, it is estimated that tens of thousands of qualified black veterans were turned away from college, not because they lacked the ambition or the grades, but because there was simply no room for them. The promise of a free education was, for many, an empty one. The barriers did not only exist in the South. Even in the North, many colleges and universities practiced informal forms of discrimination, limiting the number of black students they would admit. Furthermore, the GI Bill's benefits were not limited to white men. Women, Native Americans, and LGBTQ+ veterans who had been given blue discharges were also systematically blocked from accessing the full benefits they had earned. For Native Americans, VA loans could not be used to build homes on tribal lands. The GI Bill was a powerful tool, but its power was reserved for a select few, deepening the divides it could have helped to heal. The discriminatory way the GI Bill was implemented did more than just deny benefits to a single generation. It created a structural gap in wealth between white and black families that persists to this day. The home ownership and education that the bill provided to white veterans became the foundation of generational wealth. That first suburban house, bought for a low price in the 1950s, grew in value over decades, allowing families to pay for their children's education, start businesses, and weather financial emergencies. This economic head start was passed down from parents to children, creating a cycle of prosperity that compounded over time. By contrast, the exclusion of black veterans from these opportunities created a cycle of economic disadvantage. Denied the chance to buy homes, black families could not build equity. Denied access to a full range of educational choices, they were often locked into lower-paying jobs. This denial of wealth accumulation is a primary driver of the modern racial wealth gap. Today, the typical white family holds nearly 10 times the wealth of the typical black family. This is not the result of individual choices, but the direct legacy of government policies like the GI Bill that actively enriched one group while impoverishing another. Understanding this history is crucial because the debt it created has never been paid. The economic opportunities that were stolen from Black World War II veterans were also stolen from their children, their grandchildren, and their great-grandchildren. The effects are not confined to the past. They are visible in the disparities we see all around us in housing, education, and economic security. Acknowledging this injustice is the first step, but it is not enough. The loss of billions of dollars in potential wealth cannot be undone with simple words. It requires concrete action to address the ongoing harm. Recognizing this historical failure, there are now efforts in Congress to right this wrong. As of February 2026, lawmakers like Representative James E. Clyburn are advocating for the GI Bill Restoration Act. This proposed legislation seeks to provide restorative benefits to the descendants of the Black veterans who were unjustly denied their share of the original bill's promise. We cannot change the past, but we can work to repair the damage. Understanding how the GI Bill created a tale of two Americas is essential to building a future where the promise of our nation is finally available to all. Knowledge is power, but execution builds wealth. Follow for more.